Hi everybody, I'm Stacy with Stacy's Organizing and Decorating for Life. I'm here to help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives. Today our topic is going to be on self-esteem, codependence, and when helping isn't helping. Then we're going to finish up with being present and staying in the moment. How can we gauge when all of those things above, and that's being present and staying in the moment. So that was the solution to our problem, but we're going to talk about how we get to that. So if you like that that's our topic today, please hit the like and subscribe button below. I first off want to remind you all that I am a life coach and I have a webpage called stacyforlife.com. On this webpage there is a description of the services that I provide dealing with addiction, codependency, and grief. But not exclusively to those things, because underneath those things lies a desire for healing and healthy relationships as well as development of spiritual and soul consciousness. I work with people as young as 17 years old on up to 80 years old. What we do is we go into the closets of your mind. We pull out those things that don't fit, that no longer serve you, that are outworn and outdated, so that we can reveal to you the things that you knew were there all along that you've been looking for, making space for even more. And we dig underneath your bed and pull out those cobwebs and monsters that clouded and darkened your perspectives in your head. And we are able to reveal to you there's so many possibilities that you have. We unbury your soul so that you can find the treasure that's there and that you can continue to be open to those possibilities. So if you or anyone you know needs help in any of those areas, please feel free, once again, to look me up at stacyforlife.com. It's about helping you feel comfortable in your own skin. As I've said before, I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, or any of that. It's to dig in your soul and help you find, your treasures so you can live, love, learn, and grow. Because sometimes we just forget about them. With that being said, it's right on the mark with today's topic because I am a life coach and I am a sponsor too. And Jennifer D., she asked me, she said, Stacy, how do you keep your professional life out of your personal relationships? This is like, how do we stop being, a counselor or social worker for our sponsees? And it can even go even further, to our family. When do we know when to cut that off with our children? Because that's our biggest and hardest, I think, accomplishment is to not be codependent with our children. So we're going to talk about that. And then Stephanie C. offered the solution as being present and staying in the moment, and how we gauge that. So I am a sponsor and I am a life coach. Jennifer is, a sponsor and a professional too. So it comes with setting loving boundaries, is that's how we have to do this, is because I had to learn, for me, being in the programs, and that was several programs. So I know how to do the steps. I've worked the steps on my addiction. I've worked the steps on codependency and, even somewhat on grief, and as Melody Beattie says, that our first thing is addiction, it's the first place that we sometimes stop, but underneath addiction is codependency, and underneath codependency is grief. So all of that falls in line. And we really want to have good relationships. We wouldn't get clean, or we wouldn't, seek a 12-step program if that wasn't the thing that we wanted to do. So what happens is that we work the steps, and our sponsors teach us so much how to value ourselves, but then we get to sponsor too. And so what happens is that we're giving away what was freely given to us. So when I sponsor people, I am not charging people. I don't ever charge people to go through the 12 steps, to give away what was freely given to me. What I do charge for is the lessons that I've learned in life on life's terms, and the practice and development and coaching of those things, because there were people who gave me strength. Sometimes we have to go out further from just our sponsors. Our sponsors are free. They're freely giving to us what they, are grateful for. But they aren't obligated to us to spend an hour on the phone listening to us vent or anything like that. They're not obligated to us to speak to us at any, just whenever we want. When you have a social worker or you have a life coach, they set aside an hour of time, usually close to an hour, maybe 50 minutes of time for you to be able to talk and discuss about everything. That's what they do, that's their time. Then their time is valuable. And see, by being a sponsor, we have to draw that line in between by setting loving boundaries. And it's not always with that, because then when I got to sponsor people, it was a learning process of how to set the boundaries, because I'm an early morning person, so I don't like to chit chat on the phone and hang out on the phone after 9, 10 at night. See, a lot of people don't respect and value their own time, therefore they're not going to respect yours. This is in and outside of the program, I find. So we have to respect our own time. We have to teach people, how to treat us, and this is where it comes from. So when I was sponsoring ladies, and we suggest when you're sponsoring somebody for them to call you on a daily basis to build that relationship and stay accountable. And so one of the things that I would tell people is, you call me daily. So they did. The thing was sometimes what I learned, and it's a learning process both ways. So what happened is I had a sponsor, she calls me at like 9 or 10 at night, and she's like, I almost forgot to call. And I'm like, darling, you did forget to call as far as I'm concerned, because you're supposed to call me in the day, and I'm not trying to chit-chat on my phone at 9 or 10 at night. So you need to call in the day, because I'm not talking at 9 or 10 at night unless your ass is falling off. So, it was setting that boundary. And she had to learn that. And later she was grateful for it. She didn't get, it didn't make her cry. She didn't get all offended or anything, because I have a right not to want to talk on the phone after 9 or 10 at night. That's my thing. And I wasn't mean. I'm just like, you did forget to call, and I said it jokingly. I'm like, you did forget to call, because it was letting her know that I don't talk on the phone at 9 or 10 at night, And so those are our first relationships that we develop oftentimes. So that was the first. And then, like I said, later she was grateful, because it taught her to value her own time, because that's what most of my sponsees have learned from me, is how to value your time. They learn so much, but I think that most of them will tell you that they've learned that their time is valuable, that and that comes from them having a discipline with their own time, them being able to do these different things. And it was learning. We have to learn these things, and we teach people how to treat us. So I taught people not to call me after 9 or 10 at night. I have to turn my phone off at night still, because I get text messages all night, and I know that that's some people's best time. So at the same time, I honor that, but I'm not trying to be texting late at night unless I'm up, and I'm rarely up late at night. And when I am, I'm not trying to text. So, it's letting people know, because we are all diverse. And so some people prefer to talk. What it taught me was that I need to set that boundary with them about, okay, I don't talk at 9 or 10 at night. When is a good time to call? So from then on, what I learned was that I needed to tell people what the best time for me was for them to call, and see when they were going to call. And that's what I learned from that, because I learned too, because it was a development process both ways. We live, love, learn, and grow. I'm so thankful for my recovery, and I do not charge. People ask what's the difference. Jennifer, as a matter of fact, asked me one time, what's the difference between being a sponsor and a life coach? And I don't charge for being a sponsor. However, people don't make appointments for me as a sponsor. I did say that they do, set aside a time. But when I mean appointment, I mean that they don't have me for an hour on the phone. I may or may not talk for an hour on the phone. My friends, I will talk for an hour on the phone, maybe, but sometimes sponsorship turns into a friendship, sometimes not. But either way, we don't always have an hour. But if I'm coaching somebody, I've put aside that time. That time is valuable, and that's why you pay for that time, because it's a coaching. It's not that, because even when I had a sponsor, I had to have a life coach on the side. I had to have somebody help me to gauge, not in my step work, but just in life in general, to live life on life's terms. That's hard for people in and outside of recovery. So some of the people that are paying me are people who are in recovery, but they're not paying me to work the 12 steps. They're paying me to help them live life on life's terms, as well as people who are not in recovery, to help them to gauge their decisions. But I don't make the decisions for them, which leads into the next session. And that's why it's so hard in the parenting aspect, or in the partner aspect, when there's, the thing that I learned in codependency is what's my business, God's business, and somebody else's business. And oftentimes we think that some things are our business, and they're not our business. After our child is 18 years old, it's not our business, the decisions that they make. Our partners. That was a hard one to swallow, when I had a person, a significant other, and that what they did wasn't my business, even if it was doing the things that were, deal breakers in the relationship. So I had to gauge it on me. I had to be the one to make a choice. A lot of times what happens is when we don't teach our kids and set these boundaries with our kids, then our kids grow up and they don't know how to set boundaries with themselves or with other people. What happens is they're indecisive because they don't have confidence. So this is why I'm talking about self-esteem, because when we continue to make decisions for our partners, our children, then they aren't developing self-esteem. They need to have choices and then realize that it's just a choice. Like I said, I work with people from 17, and I'm trying to help them at a young age before they get out of the house to learn how to make healthy choices for themselves. But I have people older than that who are so willing to, to let me make choices for them. And I tell them, I can't make the choices for you. And which way is the right way to go? I can't tell you which way is the right way to go. They're both right and they're both not. It's just like, if you take one way, you're liable to think the other way was the right way. But if you take so it doesn't matter, because there's growth in either way. Because either way that we go on our path, I had to learn that through my life coach myself, is that either way we go on our path, we're learning something. Say, for instance, that we're curious about, do I choose this relationship or that relationship? Well, if you choose not to, there's a Rush song, if you choose not to decide, you've still made a choice. Because if we sit here teetering in the middle, like a kid who, I want to play with that toy, and then they're like, okay, well then give this toy to George. And then you're like, no, but I want to play with that toy. That's the way we do in our adult relationships sometimes. It's like having that back burner. We want to have a back burner, and that's a definite sign of codependence, and that, there's a problem going on inside of us. Sometimes it can be handled, through processing, working it out. Sometimes, it can continue to go further to where somebody may need some psychological help with that, And like I said, I work with the soul. I don't work with the psyche. That's for the psychiatrist and the psychologist. That's not what I do. I just help you in general dig out, those things, reveal some things to you, have some aha moments. But I don't try to do those, and I don't think a psychiatrist or psychologist is going to tell you the decisions that you need to make. No one's going to tell you that as an adult. So it's something that we have to start on when our kids are younger, so that they know how to make these decisions when they get older, and that there's going to be cause and effect. That it's not good or bad, it's just cause and effect. But people want to judge it, and people look for outside answers in the codependency realm. And I explain to my clients that you know the answer in your soul. You know what you want to do. But sometimes they're so codependent that it is so buried that they don't know what they want to do, because they want to make, their happiness is gauged on if they're making somebody else happy. Their happiness is gauged on, if they're filling in all the blanks. There's some myth that you have to have all the blanks filled in. That you may be happy doing one thing, but you may not have money. You may be happy having money, but you might not be happy doing another thing. You may be happy with this relationship because maybe they are more soft, but you might want this relationship because maybe they're more hard. It's just, you're going to learn something with each one. If you go for something because it's going to have more money, you may find that your soul's not being felt. If you go with something where your soul is being felt, you're liable to be poor. If you go with something, where you have a relationship where somebody's hard, you're going to learn how to, set boundaries or not. If you go with someone whose relationship is soft, you're going to run over them or you're going to be grateful. So it's up to you to choose, and those could be happening on a daily basis. So you have to figure out, what do you want? What do I want? And this is what my life coach would always say to me when I would go to her, and tell her the things that were going on. She would say, Stacy, what do you want? And that's what a life coach does. A sponsor doesn't tell you what you want either. Sponsor, like I said, takes you through the steps. That's what your sponsor's job is. Your sponsor isn't supposed to give you legal advice. Your sponsor isn't supposed to give you psychological advice. They don't do that. That's just not what they do. They don't have to do that. All they have to do is take you through the steps because they're giving you their time, and their time is valuable. They have families. They have jobs. They have other things that they're doing. So if you're a sponsor, you have a family, you have a job. I always took my sponsees through the steps on codependency if they were willing after they worked the steps on their addiction, because it's hard to divide that line. And there is a line that needs to be divided there about where is the sponsor and then where is the professional. So I'm glad that she asked that question, and she asked many questions. So how do we gauge this? It's like when I'm dealing with parents and they're afraid of their children's failure, I'm like, why are you afraid of them failing? Because if they're setting themselves up, once they get to a certain age, I'm not saying when they're 5, 6 years old, you're supposed to guide them as best as you can. And I feel for parents these days having to homeschool these kids, but if their kids are making decisions, and I had to learn with my own decisions, is that what are they indicative of? If you accept this or don't accept this, if you decide you can't make a decision, well, you're still making a choice, just like the Rush song I talked about earlier. So when our kids are making a choice or not making a choice, then how do we stand back? When they get to be, like I said, 17 years old, this is where they need to start learning how to be grown up. It's okay to help her. I'm not saying don't help your kids at all. I'm saying you don't want them to be dependent on you all the time for help. Trust me. We have so many kids nowadays, they won't move out of the house. We have created this mess because as wounded parents, not knowing why we were wounded, and this is where my job comes in as a life coach, when we don't know why we are wounded, because I had to work on this myself, is that we were all just meant to evolve. I'm not saying that, all of us were, that there's something bad, because it's not bad. All of us were meant to evolve. There comes a time when we don't listen to our parents anymore anyway. So you're either being codependent or you're, just, my dad told me, these are some for instances, and I thought it was terrible. I thought he was awful at the time. When I was 19, I was married to a wrong person. My dad didn't even attend my wedding. And yet then I go to my dad, this is the things we do, and we don't think about when, I go to my dad later and I'm like, Daddy, and he's like, you made your bed, you're going to have to lie in it. And I thought, oh, he's so mean. But, I did make my bed, and I did have to lie in it, and I did finally get a divorce, and I had to do it myself, and so it made me stronger. That's how I developed an esteem. That's how I got growth. That's how I became responsible and learned that cause and effect of my actions, you see. Not everybody does things so extreme as that, but we have to learn to let our kids do that. Because I had one parent who would save my ass all the time, and I had another parent who would not save my ass at all. He was not gentle. So I had the gentle parent, and I had the parent over here. So that's what I used to say to my own kids, is that they both had good qualities, both my mom and my dad. I still have my mom, my dad's gone. But they both had good qualities. And I used to tell my kids, is I hope that you end up with mine and your dad's good qualities and that you discard our bad qualities. Because as human beings, that's what we have. But we have a choice on whether we want to be codependent and let our kids have self-esteem. They may have to still seek their own life coach, therapy, or whatever, or not later, because they may think that there's this perfect world out there, that they were supposed to be brought up a certain way. And see, I think that we've bought into that when we've let these kids come entitled, and then people want to judge them as entitled and spoiled brats. And yet we had some responsibility in that, and I'm hoping that between parents and schools, I'm not saying it's just parents, I'm hoping that between parents and schools, with the breakdown of systems, that we're going to be able to teach kids how to be responsible. Maybe in school they can teach them how to handle and manage bank accounts extensively, and how to handle and manage money, how to handle and manage responsibility, because they don't really get to learn that it just bluntly. I mean, they get to hear about different people's stories about wars and etc., but they don't really get to hear those stories about consciousness, about how we consciously live our lives. So that'll put me out of a job when they learn this. But I do hope for that. I do hope for these. I think that the systems are breaking down to enable those kind of things to happen. It's going to be a gradual process, just as your recovery on whatever level. You may or may not believe you're in recovery, but if you're living life here, it's kind of a recovery period, especially during this pandemic time and stuff. We're all trying to recover from the pandemic in some way, shape, or form or another. This world is a different world. These holidays are different holidays. Everything's different. We have to adjust and adapt. And so that's what this video is really about, is how we let our kids, how we let our coworkers, how we let our sponsees, how we let them develop self-esteem. Is sometimes you may have to tell your sponsees, I think you need more help than what I'm able to give you because, of this. I have my own time and stuff, but we can get drawn into it, That's why I still work with people on codependency, is because even after all these years, if I wasn't working with other people, then I might be able to succumb to a codependent action because society teaches us in large to be codependent. So when I'm working with parents, when I'm working with kids, when I'm working with, people who are sponsoring other people, it's easy to fall into. And a lot of people have it and don't even realize it. I know when, I've shared with y'all before that when I was told I was codependent, I didn't want to hear it because I didn't know what codependence was. But people don't realize the extreme or the depth of the codependency, how far it can go. Instead of just bitching about our parents, we have to realize that, on some level, maybe they did the best they could, maybe they didn't. But what did we learn from it, rather than just bitching? There comes a time in our life where we just have to quit bitching about what they did and take a responsibility for how we're feeling and doing, or not. We're going to be miserable if we don't. See, that's where the esteem comes in, is when we learn the cause and effect of our actions, when we learn to heal those wounds that are underneath so that we don't bring those wounds up to our own kids. Oftentimes what happens is that if our parents hurt us in some way, then when we have our kids, then we project onto our kids our parents' pain, if that makes sense. So if we want them to have esteem, the real deal is for us to heal ourselves. So that I hope that this video has been helpful and that it made complete sense. So the last part of the video is about being present and staying in the moment. We reflexively have made our kids entitled. We've reflexively answered to these things. Either we didn't want to really think it out, or we just have done it for so long a certain way that we didn't pause and think about it. But what I had to learn too in the codependency and setting boundaries was how to pause and be present for a moment. And right now we're going through so much in this time, where we do want to help people, but we do have to sit and pause and be present, or else it's easy to overextend ourselves. So it's a different kind of season. We have a choice to do things differently. So we realize that we have choices in the cause and effect. So we just stop and we breathe. And we think about those possibilities. I've talked about flight, fright, and freeze, the parasympathetic responses. But we can choose our responses by being present. And it all starts with breathing those breaths, getting present in the moment. Because when we're breathing rapidly, we're thinking about, what do I got to do? When we're breathing, rapidly sometimes, and even sometimes slow, we're thinking about, oh God, what do I got to do? Based on past things. But if we're present in the moment, and one thing we say in recovery as well is, what do I get to do? So you can stop and gauge, what do I get to do? What is going to bring the most benefit? Did I have time? I've told y'all before that I gauge what I can do for somebody else through what kind of time I have. Can I afford it mentally, spiritually, financially, emotionally, and mentally? Can I afford it in all those categories? Because if I don't have the money, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do that at this time. You don't even have to say I don't have the money. I'm not going to be able to do that at this time. Because sometimes people always say, I don't have the money, and then they're just promoting more and more lack in their life. I can't do that at this time. If somebody asks you to financially do something, if somebody asks you spiritually, that's going to do something, that maybe if there's if they're asking you to go to a school concert or something, you can gauge, can I do it at this time? Do I have the time to do it? Do I really have the time to do it? Which there's not going to be a school concert. Forget about that. No school concerts, but whatever it is, if whatever holiday occasion, do you feel like you're well enough at this time? That's a physical part. Do you feel like you're well to go out? Do you want to go out amongst people? People are having to figure that out all the time. Can I afford that? Is my immune system okay? If your immune system's okay, then you may feel comfortable going out amongst people. And then the other one is, mentally. Am I subjecting myself to something? Am I subjecting myself to something? Do I want to subject myself to something? Do I know how this always turns out? And that again can come with boundaries. So oftentimes I tell people when they're in a situation where they have to go attend something mentally, that they take a partner with them, take somebody with them there, or that they just say, look, I'm going to spend this much time here and then be gone. Because sometimes you may love people with all of your heart but not resonate with them. And rather to, sit around and then get more teed off and then start judging and all of that, which is something we don't want to do, then we could just dismiss ourselves and be glad that we showed up and that we were able to give somebody a hug and that we were able to sit in that space with them for a few minutes. That's better than nothing sometimes, if you're okay with that. Again, I hope this video has been helpful and that you've gotten the information that you need. I always tell people to breathe, pray, and say, I don't know. And I'm going to suggest that here at the end of the video. As far as being present, is that you're present in every breath. You can't take yesterday's breath today. You can't take tomorrow's breath today. I've learned that there's a lot of peace in the present, and there's present in the breath. Because as long as you've got your breath, you have that vital life force going through you. There's a reason you're still here. It's to honor yourself and to honor others, because we all have something else to offer. And then when you pray to whoever you want to pray to, or just ask. I tell people, ask to have this obsession relieved from me. Please, these thoughts that are causing me harm and pain, about the shoulds, should nots. Don't should on yourself, and just pray. Ask the obsessions to be removed, the thoughts that no longer serve you, and then say, I don't know. And I don't know opens you up for the magic, mystery, and miracles of this life, because you're not making shit up. So I hope that the things that you got out of this is that a sponsor does not get paid, that they are giving you freely of their time and gratitude for what was freely given to them. Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're not, but they're not getting paid, and so their time must be valued as well. Maybe they have 15 minutes, maybe they have more. Some days they do and do not, but they aren't getting paid, so please respect them and their time. If you even have an appointment with a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, or a life coach, you need to respect their time and make sure that if you want to get the value out of what you're getting, that you show up for your sessions. Because you're not going to get what you're hoping if you hired somebody for that, if you don't show up for your sessions. So I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope that you've learned maybe instances on how you can set clear and healthy boundaries. That if you are in one of these fields, when I'm hanging out with my friends, they aren't asking me life coach questions. We aren't talking for an hour about, life coach instances. In fact, I got to talk to one of my friends' clients last night, and somebody that I sponsor also as well. And so it's unlimited. And you know what? It was really cool because she said, so this isn't a session. So what about you? So I got to tell her what I was up to, which was really cool, So you can do all of this, but it's all up to us, is to lovingly treat people how we want to be treated. But we know we want to be treated that way with love, but we also need that setting of boundaries, and sometimes Like I say, with a smile on my face, I say a lot of stuff with a smile on my face, setting healthy boundaries, and it goes over a lot smoother. I used to be security for the schools, and I would be guiding parents out, and I'd be like, okay, it's time to go now. A security officer could come off harsh and be like, y'all got to get out of here. But I didn't do that. I would say to them, okay, I would take them by their arm and be gentle with them, and hold on and be like, okay, we got to go now, and I would walk out with them and they would be smiling and I would be smiling. It's all about how we say things oftentimes, So I hope that you'll say things with love when you're setting boundaries, but that you do start learning how to set the boundaries, and that we know it's just cause and effect, that we allow people to develop esteem, whether it be our kids, whether it be our friends, partners, and etc. We don't have the right to tell somebody else how to live their life, and we shouldn't set ourselves up for that, because it's just, nobody has that kind of time. I always say too, staying in my business, That's how I had to learn with that relationship. With relationships we learn. Sometimes they're forever relationships, sometimes not. But we have to stay in our business sometimes rather than worrying about another person's relationship, right? It's like, no, we stay in our business and love people. The bottom line is love. I'm repping my Beatles shirt today for John Lennon's anniversary of our loss of him. So I wish you much love and peace, and I'll connect with you again next week. Thank you so much. Bye.